Let's begin with a word of prayer. Lord God, our Heavenly Father, your Son Jesus told us, I am the way, the truth, and the life. What incredible words those are, and what urgent words those are, because his last words as he left this earth were the Great Commission, go therefore and make disciples, and so on. We all know this very famous verse. It is so important for those who have never heard of you, Lord, or know about you, to hear about you. We may be the only lifeline that they have. And so, Lord, as we leave here today, may we each know that the mission field is right in front of us, only a foot away from us, in front of our face, no matter where we are. And that person that we talk to that doesn't know you yet, you might be the one that plants the seed. Others might be there to water the seed. Others might be there to prune it, to help it grow. But what a blessing it'll be when we arrive in heaven and people are thanking us that we never knew that we were the one that started the whole process. What a blessing that is, Lord, to be your hands and feet. Now bless our study today, that we might all take something from it, that we might all understand a little bit more about international mission and the reason that we do it, and that you might place it upon our hearts to either join us or continue to pray for us or continue to support this incredible project. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. All right, everybody. I've got just a brief little opening remarks here. Most everything, all the facts are pretty much on that sheet that you picked up on the way in the door. I've got just a little bit more. As it says there, we've been a part of this project since around 2009. Salem Lutheran Church started it in 2007 when the LCMS asked them to duplicate what they were doing in Honduras with medical and vision and dental clinics. And it turns out vision clinics are the best vehicle for seeing lots of people. And our goal, being an evangelism clinic disguised as a vision clinic, is to see as many people with the gospel as we can. So that's always made the most sense. So this slideshow should take only about 25 minutes. There won't be any animals or birds this time because we've got so much to talk about, but I'm recording this on Zoom. The recording will be posted at Redeemer, on my YouTube, and on my Facebook, and there will be a bonus section with wildlife and birds. So that'll get you to come there and check that out, because we saw some really incredible things, like a leopard sleeping in a tree, 2 young giraffes fighting, learning how to fight, things I've never seen before in all the times I've been there. Absolutely amazing. So anyway, we had a lot of challenges on this trip. There were violent demonstrations for the last 2 years in the neighborhood where we serve because of a disputed presidential election. Does that sound familiar to anybody here? Anyway, they were protesting every Thursday for 2 years and shutting down all businesses, everything. It was so bad that our friend Catherine, who goes anywhere, anytime, would not go out of her house on Thursdays. They burned the Presbyterian school right next to the church where we serve. So this is how dicey it was. We prayed and prayed, and they decided to have a truce the week that we were going to have our clinic to try and sort things out among the political parties. So thank you, Jesus, for that. One other thing was, we thought that we had a team of somewhere between 7 and 10 people that all looked pretty solid to come on the trip. And one thing after another happened, like Pastor Kevin got the opportunity to go to Israel. I mean, that's a once in a lifetime thing, to go to the Holy Land with studying with seminarians over there. Every single person that got picked off had an incredible reason, you couldn't argue with. And we ended up with 4 people going on the trip. Now, I've done a mission before with only 3, but it's not something I really want to do. Luckily, with the 4, we had the Dorans, who are both repeat offenders like myself. So we had the makings of a team already that could train the volunteers to do what they do. And then Elizabeth was absolutely incredible with what she did as well. So God gave us the strength to be able to do what we did. We ended up seeing 2,418 patients, which is one of the larger clinics that we've done, no matter what the size of the team is. 1,362 people got reading glasses, so that's more than half. And that's always just an incredible thing when people come and we say, why did you come to our clinic? What can we do to help you? If they're over 40, almost every person says, I can't read my Bible anymore. And it just always touches my heart and renews my faith, because you would never hear that in our country so much. It'd be, I can't read People magazine, or my iPad doesn't look so good. But can you imagine somebody saying, I can't read my Bible? Almost to a person they say that. It's absolutely amazing. 323 people got distance glasses of one sort or another. 31 people got both distance glasses and reading glasses. Many people need both. And then probably more than half, maybe 2/3 of the people got medications, which is what Elizabeth did all day long. So she had the blessing of getting to talk to a large number of people as they came through and learn about the culture, the daily lives, what goes on there. So it was absolutely incredible. And the one thing that really always floats my boat is we had 62 people ended up getting referred for cataract surgeries. 47 of them have already had the surgery. The other 15 are going to have it within the next week or two. And then we've got a number of young children that are going to get treated with surgeries or other methods to take care of some pretty bad eye conditions that are going to make their lives better for the rest of their lives. So anyway, with all of that said, we'll get started here with the slideshow. I'm getting old, so I'll sit down for a little while here. So this picture is at the very end of the clinic. This is all our volunteers on the steps on the front of the church called Springs of Life Lutheran Church. It's called that because there's actually a spring underneath the church that wells up and waters a garden towards the back of the property where they feed the whole community with vegetables like kale and other vegetables that they grow in the garden. So it's really a great ministry to the community. There we go. Okay, every trip starts with us being commissioned as missionaries by being prayed over at all three services by our pastors and by the congregation. And I always think that this is a very moving experience. We know that we're being sent by our congregation, that we're going to serve the Lord. It takes any fear or trepidation out of my heart. I used to have a little bit smaller comfort zone. Now, you know, it's whatever will be, and you know that you're in the Lord's hands, but it's absolutely a blessing to know we're being sent by the congregation. This luggage tag of Elizabeth kind of tells the story of our travel. This is our other big challenge. We were supposed to go from Austin to JFK to London and Nairobi. And JFK, we got stuck on the runway for 2 hours. And we hurried through security at Heathrow. And when we got right to the last thing where you get to the plane, the guy says to me, "Oh, you're 59 minutes before the flight. You have to be an hour or more." One lousy minute. I mean, unbelievable. We spent the next hour and a half at a rerouting desk that British Airways had. And we had a choice of waiting a full day for another British Airways flight or going to Amsterdam and flying out that night and getting to Nairobi at 6 in the morning on Friday rather than around 8 or 9 at night on Thursday night. So we took the Amsterdam route, and that was on Kenyan Air, a pretty good airline run by Kenyans. It has really good food, and they're real hospitable. And I got to practice my Swahili a little bit on the crew, so that was all good. Anyway, the reason for the luggage tag was we got to Nairobi and none of our luggage made it. All we had was our carry-ons. So this is a happy crew after 40 hours of travel from start to finish. With we should have had a night's sleep there in Nairobi, and we didn't. And we were supposed to, Elizabeth and I were supposed to go on a safari for a couple of different safaris and do a few different things outside of Nairobi for about 2.5 days. And so we had the choice of going and resting up at where we were going to be lodging or carrying on. So we carried on. We had to wait until 9 in the morning for the mall to open so we could buy clothes and we could buy some toiletries. Because literally we had just what was in our carry-on. And we don't take any liquids because it's really hard to get through Heathrow. You got one extra security stop if you have liquids with you. And sometimes that's the difference between making the flight or not making it. So anyway, all that safari stuff and other activities will be online with the recording when we put that out there in the next few days. So Elizabeth and I, after we did a little safari at Lake Naivasha, we're supposed to drive about half an hour to a school that Catherine Wangari, our on-the-ground point person for the project, has started on land that she owns. It's named the Audrey McShann School. It's in Congasas, which the next biggest town near there is Lake Nakuru, which some of the folks in the room have been to with me before. So we got there about an hour and a half late because our drivers were lost. We're going up and down really nasty dirt roads with bumps. And Elizabeth and I were so tired, we kept falling asleep and then boom, another bump. And so it was kind of interesting. But anyway, they actually waited after school for about an hour and a half for us, which is pretty incredible. These kids here at the school, they've got, what is it, 110 kids and 28 teachers, I believe it is. Or no, I'm sorry, 8 teachers. And they're living on a shoestring. The teachers are only making $60 a month. They're asking for a raise to go to $100 a month. And in most of the country, the teachers make about 150, just to let you know. So these teachers, they got a real strong heart for Jesus and for the kids. These kids are the kids of day laborers at small farms, most of whom are illiterate, who don't value education. And so this school is very, very essential for them. So we got a nice greeting, and then they perform for us. Nice dance with choreography and a song. While all that was going on, Elizabeth got a really nice video of that. She did a great presentation for a women's Bible study Wednesday of this week. And then here's one more shot of all the kids that were still around. And they're so poor there that sometimes the kids would come in with eggs or chickens or goats to pay for their tuition. And so it's really on a shoestring. Catherine's doing everything she can to keep that going. So any way we can help support that would be great. So here's one more picture with them all surrounding Elizabeth and I. We were going to be late to get to where we were lodging, and you can't get in after 6 o'clock, but they have such hospitality there that Catherine's sister-in-law, who runs the school, insisted on giving us tea and food. So we had to sit and do that and then go like crazy to get to where we were going to be lodging at a national park. And it was 6:15 when we got there. And there was actually a woman, a park ranger there that was not going to let us in, but Catherine got on the phone and somehow she worked a miracle. After all this travel stuff, if we would have had to drive 3 hours back to Nairobi, I would have just given up. That would have been it. Just, just shoot me. So the Dorans stayed around Nairobi because they've done a lot of the other activities that Elizabeth and I were going to do. And they went to the Owasso Osigili School and Rescue Center that Trinity Klein Lutheran Church down in Klein, Texas, started several years ago. And they have poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into this, into a beautiful building. And the school and rescue center, the rescue part is they're rescuing young girls from the tribal areas from forced marriages. When they first started out, the girls were maybe 14 years old that they were rescuing. Now they're rescuing girls down to maybe 8 or 9 years of age because the older population's already being rescued. And this kind of forced marriages and other things that go on out there in the tribal areas are illegal, but they're out in the middle of nowhere. So there's really nothing they can do about it. I'll let Sandra and Ken speak a little more to this because they were there. I've never been at the rescue center, but here's a few pictures from there, and then they can describe what their experience was. You'll notice in a lot of our pictures everywhere we go, the girls have very short hair, and sometimes it's hard to tell them from the boys. It's because of lice. It's for hygiene, to be able to combat that. The longer hair would be a problem. So I don't know what's going on here, but it looks like fun with balloons. I think that's pretty cool. A game. And then this really struck my heart when I saw this picture. It says discouraging early marriages. It looks like it was done by one of the girls. There's 5 points on here. Stop early marriages. Number 2, let me get first my future. Number 3, let me get education first. Number 4, will not marry or get married before I become an adult. And number 5, do not abuse my rights. So it's great that these girls are getting an education, which they might not have in the tribal situation they were in the first place. And they're going to be the next generation of leaders out in that part of the country. So here's where they lodge. They've got bunk beds, and you've got a couple of the girls there. They range from grade school to high school age about. And then here's a group picture that was at the end of the visit. So Elizabeth and I drove back on a Sunday morning very early from out in the countryside, not much traffic. Church is at 10 o'clock, but that's only a suggestion. It lasts about 3.5 hours. If you're there before the sermon, you're probably okay. So there's just a variety of music. The Holy Spirit is there. It's always on fire when we get to worship with the Kenyans. This is a little band of young people with brass instruments and some drums that played for us. This is an adult choir. Oops. Many of these people are in our, I don't know what's going on here. Many of these ladies were volunteers in our clinic, and so were the guys. And they've got electric instruments there, bass and electric guitar and an organ for this particular number. This in the red, that's Bishop Bakari Kia. He's the bishop of the Central Diocese of Kenya, which includes about 2/3 of the population of the whole country. So he's at one of the top people in the church. The church is called the ELCK. That's the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Kenya, and they're an altar fellowship with the LCMS. So what that means is their pastors could come here to the United States. They could give communion. They could do a sermon. They could do all the sacraments. They could marry people, do anything our pastors could. And likewise, our pastors can do the same thing there. That's how close the two church bodies are. In the white robe next to him is Thomas Okello, who was the caretaker at Kawangware, the other big slum church that we've served at many, many times. And now he's the evangelist at Kibera. They don't have enough pastors, and so the evangelists many times run the worship and preach and do everything on a Sunday morning. And when a pastor is there is when they'll have communion or any kind of sacraments that are needed, that you need a ordained pastor to do. So here's another mixed choir of young ladies and the older ladies. The one over there on the left in the kind of magenta or purplish top, her name is Jacqueline. She's been running the music ministry ever since I've been going there in 2009. And she's just wonderful. We found out she's got an eye condition that is probably going to need surgery, and we're working on getting her to get that taken care of, because she's very key to the worship and to the leadership of the church there. This is the offering time. And so this choir up front is all dancing around and doing choreography, and it's very joyful. And then those two baskets on the little stool in the front, as you feel moved in the congregation, there's no real order to it. You get up and you put your offering in there, and then you go back to your chair. Oops. Okay, here we go. This is going crazy on me. Okay, now this was very special for Elizabeth and I. The folks over there in Kibera follow things on social media. They're very well connected. Everybody's got a cell phone. They've got an incredible cellular network. They skipped over having copper wire like we did. We've still got some people that have landlines in our country that are 120 years old. And so they're working off of satellites and cell and all of that. Many times they have better internet, and they're more connected than we are, and they know what's going on everywhere in the world. And they see what we're doing in the US, and they say, you're not doing it right. But anyway, they saw when we got prayed over, when we got sent by our congregation. So this is the first time this has ever happened. They prayed over us to receive us as missionaries. And I thought that was really a special moment too. And Ken and Sandra worshiped at Catherine's church that morning. We didn't have enough transportation to get everybody to everywhere they needed to be. So sometimes that's an issue. So now the Vision Clinic. Okay, this I'm going to go through the steps that a person goes through when they come to our clinic. This is fairly large grounds that this church is on. They've got a school with over 100 kids in it, and we'll show you how big the church is. These tents that you see are rented by Redeemer, so are all the chairs for the people, the plastic chairs, all of that. We take care of all the expenses of putting on the equipment, and then the hosting congregation is responsible for food and for volunteers. And we had about 40 volunteers, so they really did their part, including evangelists and pastors. This first tent here is where people get registered for the clinic, and they fill out a registration card for them that has their name, it has their phone number on it in case we have to reach them. Everybody's got a phone. They put on there what faith that they are. If they're a Christian, who their pastor is. If they're Muslim, who their imam is. We see a number of Hindus in every clinic. There's a big Hindu population there as well, and then people that are unchurched. So people are pretty honest about, and there's a question on there, when was the last time you were in church? And if it's like 6 months ago, our people on the ground will be calling up their pastor saying, hey, so-and-so needs to get into church. So it helps with getting people back into church. But this card helps us when people come into the clinic, and it's got their age on there too, which is very important, with what kind of eye conditions they might have and how we might need to relate to them based on their age. So this is where they get registered. Now that registration tent is the one on the left that we just saw in the previous picture. These other two tents are where people get evangelized. They get the gospel from evangelists or pastors that are local there. And they do it in a number of ways, sometimes just by preaching. Other times we have what's called an evangelism cube, which folds out into 6 or 7 different pictures that tells the story of the gospel in pictures. And so you don't need any particular language in order to understand it. And then everybody gets a gospel tract, either in English or Swahili, which are the 2 main languages there. So they get it in the language that makes sense to them with the same pictures in this little pamphlet, so that it can be a reminder to them. So the people get evangelized there. And then there's a large tent that I don't have a picture of, where maybe 100 people can wait to get into the clinic. Because when you go to the doctor, you wait in a waiting room before you get in. You're not in your exam room with 3 other people waiting for the doctor. We used to bring as many people into the clinic as we could when we first started doing this, and it was mass chaos. It was loud. It was crazy. We found out we could actually see more people by only allowing about 10 people at a time into the clinic in an orderly fashion, working through them very orderly and bringing in another 10 as those were moving through the clinic. And it's a steady drip, 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 and it doesn't seem like you're working all that hard. But at the end of the week, we had 2,400 people. That's about 500 a day. It's pretty amazing. So this is a picture of the clinic from back near Elizabeth's medication table towards the front of the church. This is where we worship. You can see the cross on the wall up there. And then this next picture is from the front of the church looking towards the back. And this is what a well-run clinic looks like. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of people in there. About half of those people are the volunteers, and then about half of them are the patients that have come to be seen for various eye conditions. So once they enter the clinic, the first thing that we do is we give them an eye chart exam to test their distance vision to see if they need any help with seeing far away. And that's important because we have an automatic machine that helps us with that. It's one of the next steps that we do. So it's best to have that information, and it gets written on their registration card so we know what that's going to be at the next station. The next station, and I've only got one picture of this, and it's my friend Emmanuel, who's the president of this congregation. He used to be the evangelist there, a dear friend over the years. And I are praying over this man in the black leather jacket. His name is Peter, and he owns a liquor store, and he's a hardcore alcoholic. And he wanted to change his life. He wanted to come back to the church. Well, any of you that know me very well over the years know my story and my witness regarding addiction and Jesus healing me and all of that. So we had a real nice talk with him, and he was supposed to come to church the next week. And so I'm hoping that worked, because a lot of times people are already believers or have been, but life gets in the way, they backslide, whatever. I'm just really hoping that this works out. Anyway, what typically happens in this triage station is this the traffic control for this clinic. We decide there whether a person's going to get reading glasses, whether they're going to see our local doctors, whether they're going to get distance glasses, or whether they need to see a doctor for medication. The doctors also help out with these decisions, but the reason for this station being there is because we're able to talk to every single person that comes through the clinic. We get a second chance to share the gospel with them, and we pray over everybody one-on-one, just like you see in this picture here. I only had 2 people the whole week politely say they didn't want to be prayed over. It never turns into a confrontation. Most people think it's wonderful that somebody's come halfway around the world to pray over them. So it's a prayer exactly for their needs, not a rote prayer like the Muslims that pray 5 times a day, but they're specific prayers at certain times of the day, and it probably becomes meaningless after a while, just like if we did the Lord's Prayer 20 times a day, eventually it would probably lose its impact, you would think. You'd just be mouthing the words. So anyway, that's from a clinic point of view, it's traffic control. But from the evangelist point of view, which is our real purpose for being there, this is our chance to give the person a second touch, we call it, of the gospel. The first touch is out in the evangelism tent. And I can't tell you how many times over the years people have come to Christ at this station, or they've gone on to be baptized that very day. This is a very powerful ministry, this part of it, because we had so few people. I spent a large amount of my time in this station and probably prayed over maybe, I don't know, maybe a quarter to a third of those 2,400 people. They made sure that everybody that was a Muslim, a Hindu, or a non-believer, I was the one that worked with them, because our young people that were volunteers were not as comfortable praying, and I'd done it so much that I don't have a comfort zone anymore. We realize how urgent it is. So the next station, if the person needs distance glasses, and we know that from their registration card when we're in the triage station, they go here to be examined. And this is a brand new machine that we rented from Trinity Klein. They bought 10 of these for their teams. I think they're about $8,700 a piece. It's major new technology. Our two auto refractors that we own at Redeemer are from 2009. Now think about how different your smartphone is from 2009 when it was a brick until now, right? So, you know, that's a lifetime in technology. So they didn't have as many teams as they normally would. And I'm good friends with the leadership at Trinity Klein. So I approached them about, hey, please let us rent one of those to try it out. And it all worked out where they ended up happy because it's helping pay their expenses. And it helped our clinic see so many more people, because this is boom, boom, boom. You just aim this at a person's face, and when you're looking at the screen on the back, there's a dot between their eyes, and they look directly at you, and all of a sudden, boom, out comes a prescription for distance glasses for both eyes. And so we're good to go. We used to make glasses for everybody from scratch, and we used to call those Gandhi glasses for older people, but then young people didn't know what that was, so now we call them Harry Potter glasses. They have to be round because you have to be able to rotate them for astigmatism to get the eyes lined up. And so anyway, what we're doing now is probably 85 to 90% of the people that need distance glasses, your two prescriptions for your two eyes are very similar. They're not that different. And so we have glasses now that are like reading glasses, but they're for distance in different strengths. And so for the majority of people, we can give them those glasses, and then their brain will automatically adjust a little bit so they work great. And then we don't have all the inventory with lenses, all the labor, and it's time intensive making the glasses, all of those issues. We still have an inventory of supplies for making glasses over in Kenya that we keep at Catherine's office. And so what happens when people do need distance glasses that are custom made, because one eye is way different than the other, or they need Coke bottle glasses, this machine can only do up to a fairly average prescription. It can't be real strong. We will send that prescription over to Catherine, and because they have the phone number and the registration card, they're able to deliver the glasses to the person later that week. So this has worked out much better for us than the way we did it in the past. So things do change, and we learn over the years from how things go. This station here is the reading glasses station, and there's Jacqueline, our music minister, right in the middle. All smiles. I just love the way everybody smiles at our clinics. And they have different boxes of all the different powers of reading glasses. When you go to Walgreens, you've got plus 1.0s, plus 1.25, plus 1.5, up to 3 or 4 different strengths. We've actually got a little chart that can tell you by your age what you need, and it's almost always right. So if you're 40 to 45, you need a 1.0. If you're 45 to 50, you might need a 1.25 or a 1.5, but you're only going to have to try 1 or 2 pairs on a person by their age, and you will know. And if you're over 40 anywhere in the world, you need reading glasses. Your arms aren't long enough for the newspaper anymore. So that's what happens here is people get reading glasses, and they usually have their little pamphlet from the gospel tent. And so they're able to read that, you know, they might read John 3:16. Oh yeah, I can read that. You know, that's great. Next, we have our medical staff. I believe the two ladies on the left are actually doctors with the Ministry of Health, and our dear friend Carolyn Kamani is a nurse, and she's on the right. And we've worked with her before, but we became great friends with her at this clinic, and she got really connected with our liaison there in Kenya, Catherine, and they're starting to be a dynamic duo with getting people surgeries and working with blind people, doing all kinds of amazing things. She's got a real heart for the Lord. She's a real leader in her own church. She sends me pictures now and then of her reading the gospel in the church and, you know, that kind of thing. She's just absolutely amazing. So what they do is they refer people for medications over to where Elizabeth was working, or they'll send people over to another doctor that examines them for stronger distance glasses that our machine can't handle, or maybe there's some kind of an eye condition that needs surgery, and they can write the referrals out that we pay for. We pay for the surgeries, but they do the paperwork that's going to get taken to a Kenya Ministry of Health clinic. Here's our other doctor, Chris. He's been with me on many, many trips at many different locations. And they've got a pair of glasses there where he changes lenses in and out, just like we do here in the States with the machine. Is A better or B, you know, 1 or 2, but he's having to do that by hand. And if we had to do that with every patient that needs distance glasses, we wouldn't be able to see the numbers of people we do. His station was almost always the one that was backed up a bit, but for good reason, because the people need more help. And so we understand that. Finally, we've got Elizabeth here with our super volunteer, Peter, dispensing some medication to this man. The number one thing that we hear in the triage station when we ask people what the problem with their eyes is, besides not being able to read their Bible, is I've got dry or itchy or scratchy eyes. Well, they burn trash in the slums. There's all kinds of pollution on the cars. They don't have all the controls that we do. I mean, I feel like I smoke 2 packs a day when we work in the slum sometimes on certain days. So, I mean, it's understandable. The other thing they have going against them is they're near the equator, and Nairobi is between 5,000 and about 6,500 feet, depending on where you are. So you're not only at the equator, you're in very bright sun. So it'd be similar to Denver, only if it was close to the equator. So we see a lot of cataracts at a much younger age, maybe in the early 50s, late 40s even, where they usually start in the late 50s, early 60s and on here in the United States, because they don't wear sunglasses. We take care of our eyes better. And then, you know, we take care of them along the way. So about halfway through the clinic, Ken and Elizabeth went to the airport during a little bit of a slow time when the volunteers were having some lunch, looking for their bags. And I believe Elizabeth said there were 3 different rooms. Some bags have been there for over 6 months, and unfortunately, none of them were theirs. I got my bags on Sunday afternoon. We arrived Friday morning. When we got back after church, I had mine. Elizabeth never did get hers. So she was a real trooper with that. And I believe you got yours before you went to Europe. One day and 1 days later. Yeah. So anyway, it's just kind of grin and bear it. And I always tell the team when things are really going wrong that, you know, the best stories usually stink when you're in the middle of them, but they get funnier with each telling. So just look at this as a really good story that you're in the middle of right now. But so this is from Elizabeth's medication table again, looking towards the clinic during a little bit slower time. And when we have these times, it's a great time to bond with our volunteers. You can see that I'm praying with somebody in the very front left of that. I mean, we're still bringing people into the clinic a little at a time, but at the moment we're waiting to bring in another group of 10. This is Bishop Bakari's sister-in-law, and he brought her to me and said, take care of her. Now you talk about pressure. You know, we had to make sure that this was done right. So we took care of her with some really nice reading glasses, and she got some medications, and she was all smiles when we were done. And here's Elizabeth sharing a laugh with one of our clients. And when Elizabeth did her presentation Wednesday, she talked about how people are always laughing at her attempts at Swahili. And what we love, or they love, the fact that we at least try. And so they, you know, they'll correct you a little bit, or they'll have some fun with it. But I'm thinking something like that might have happened in this picture here, but everybody's happy. So everybody's smiling. Looks like this lady has reading glasses that probably came from the clinic, and she's getting some medication too. Another picture showing the inside of the church, and we kept this one in here because in the upper part of the far end of the church, all of that wooden beamwork up there is charred. Before my first mission trip to Kenya, which was to this location in 2009, there was election violence, and they burned this church and they destroyed a medical clinic that was outside of the back of the church. It's never been rebuilt to this day. And here we are 14 years later, and the church is now trying to raise funds to try and refurbish all this. The cross that was on the wall originally was charcoal the first time I saw it, and I honestly wish they had kept it to remind people you can't kill the church, because when we went there, they had 100 people in the congregation. They had about 50 in their school. And when we came back the next year after we did our first clinic there, those numbers had doubled. So the evangelism effort had really helped heal the community and bring people into the church. And that's what we're there for. We're there a blink of an eye, a very short period of time, just Monday through Friday. The folks that are there are on the ground 365 days a year. And so we impress upon them. It's up to them to really follow up with people. This was in the middle of the week. These are school children from the school. There's about 90 or 100 in the school now. And they range from real little kids up to almost probably the end of middle school age. And they sent them over a few at a time to get examined at the clinic. And most kids don't need anything, but they all need an exam. And the kids that did need something, we took care of. Another look at the clinic. This is Sandra with Carolyn and a Muslim woman, and they're talking about her son has a condition that needs surgery, or maybe not, but he definitely needs more care than we could provide. And they were working on talking about what they could do as for the child. And this brings up the fact that the healing that took place in that community while they had this truce, and it was all over politics. It wasn't over religion, but people were really at each other's throats before we came there. The Muslims, when our local people were out in the neighborhood, from about halfway through the clinic on, came back and reported to us. All the Muslims were so happy that they got treated with love. They got treated with respect. We prayed over them one-on-one. It was a beautiful thing. You see, that doesn't make sense in their faith, because they take care of their own old, they take care of their own sick, they take care of any orphans, any kind of thing within their faith, and they have an alms for the poor on top of their tithe if a person can afford it. That's required, but they don't take care of people outside of their faith community. And so that's a real witness that we take care of anybody that comes, and they just love that. And it gave the church a really much better name and image in the community, because after COVID and everything else, even here, I mean, everybody's been at each other's throats. So this was a real healing thing that the clinic helped provide. So this is the boy that they were talking about on the left. His name is Yusuf, and you can see that his left eye is kind of aiming off to the left. I've got a closer picture coming up. This is Carolyn a few weeks later at the Kikuyu clinic, where we send people for cataracts and for other kinds of treatment and surgeries. So she was continuing to work even after the clinic, helping the people. And here he is a little bit closer, so you can see more what's going on with that. And then we have, here he is after they saw him. They patched one eye and gave him some glasses that I believe are supposed to try and help straighten that eye out some, but it may result in surgery eventually. I think this is going to be something that's going to have to go on for a month or two before they decide what the next step is. But anyway, that's what's going on with him. We got another little girl that needed some help with a condition. And then this little guy has got something similar going on. And then we got a little baby. So, I mean, this just shows you, and this really touched the Dorns' hearts when they got back. They've been working with their Bible study, and their friends have been getting funds together to help with this, as well as what Redeemer's doing. I'll let Sandra and Ken talk about that as soon as we finish up here. So, and then, you can't help but pick up the little kids everywhere. They're always cute. Ken can't help himself anyway. It's little kids and cats, right? Yeah, he loves cats. So here's a team after the whole week, when we finally finished on the last Friday afternoon, and we're still all smiles. At the beginning of every day, at the end of every day, we have a devotion where there's some music. There's always a little bit of scripture before we let patients into the clinic or after the last patient is gone. And I've always made a habit on the very last day doing the devotion myself rather than one of the evangelists or somebody else. And I always do it out of the end of the second chapter of the book of Acts, where it talks about how they ate together, they prayed together, they were in the temple every day together, miracles were performed, and the church grew daily. And I always make a point of every one of those things that happened during the previous week in the clinic. It's the book of Acts church is not dead. It's still going on today. I mean, 47 people already, 62 total that were blind are going to be walking around as a result of this clinic by the time all the surgeries are done. And then the children, they're going to have a long life. It's going to be way different than what they would have had otherwise. To me, that's a miracle. So at the end of each clinic, we have diploma quality certificates that each volunteer gets, and there were 40 of these. I put the ones that had the most smiles in them. This one's cracking Elizabeth up for some reason. And then another one of our volunteers here. So they all come up and get recognized and get a picture with the team. And then Elizabeth and Peter, of course, that was a special relationship. They worked together all week. He's one of the leaders in the church. He's amazing. And Elizabeth can tell you a little more about him. He's got quite a story. This is Emmanuel, the president of the congregation. Thomas, the evangelist. Bishop Bakari. You got to make sure you take care of the big boss. And then here's Catherine Wangari, who without her, none of this would go on. She had 5 clinics all over the country, 2 in Nairobi and 3 out in the middle of nowhere, going on in different places at once. She's usually got 2, sometimes 3 cell phones going at the same time. I mean, I don't know how she does it. She collapses, I'm sure, at the end of a week when we have that many people there with us. So this finally is the people outside that were still left over after the clinic, the volunteers. And we've got the rest of the team down there. I took this picture from up on that balcony. And then at the end of that fact sheet, you've got how to contact us, or if you want to see more about what we do. I've got a blog that I write every day that I can while we're there that tells us by day what we're doing and what you can be praying for. It's got my contact information. And so that's all good. So that's where we are. So if would you like to speak, Sandra, maybe a little bit about the kids with the surgeries and what the trip meant to you?
Oh, I wasn't planning on getting that, but
Speak. Come back here for the microphone.
oh, okay. I've always really enjoyed these trips. This was the 4th one that I had been on, and the first one I was on, we actually only had 4 people on that trip, but it's such a fulfilling time. It makes you feel so good because you're helping so many people. And one of the things this time, going out to the girls' rescue, and Catherine was telling us they go into the villages and the tribal chiefs will tell them which girls are being, mutilated, and those are the girls that they go out and they bring to this, I call it an encampment, because you go in and there's a guard there and there's razor wire. I mean, there's no way to get in. So if they want to come in and rescue their child, that doesn't happen. And then he was talking about the school that they went to. I didn't go to that school, but the Girls Rescue Center really touched my heart so much. And I wanted to do something for them, but they're very well taken care of by Trinity Klein. Now, this other school, not so much. So what I did when I came back, because I wanted to help, I enlisted some of my friends who fortunately they're all teachers, but unfortunately they don't make a lot of money. But what I did was I said, we want to help this school if we can. If you feel the need, if you'll donate, we'll match it. And that's what happened. We ended up matching it. And so we got to send the school $900, which was good because at the time they were being coded by the health inspector. Didn't even know there was a health inspector in Nairobi, but evidently they were threatening to shut this school down. So it came at a perfect time for them. And, you know, gosh, you're just helping the kids. And then I got with Nurse Carol. Somehow I've worked with her before, and she is such a, just a gracious person. And they call these kids, they call them squint eyes. Their eyes are, you know, go in a different,
Lazy eye.
they don't call it lazy eye. They call it something different. And that's what
the medical term is strabismus.
it's what
Strabismus.
they didn't call it that either. I think
Yeah, what she said.
yeah, whatever that was, it. They called it twisted or something. So she told me, Yusuf, when he came in, you know, she was talking to me about what it would take for him, you know, to have his eye adjusted, to get the medicine, to get the glasses. And I calculated it on my phone, and it was like $25. You know, who gets $25? I mean, shoot, I went over there and I gave her the money. I said, you know, let's work with this kid. And Ken and I got to talking about it. And Carol has been so good about just staying in touch. And like once a month, we send Carol $100. $100 will take care of a surgery for one of these children. It'll take care of the glasses. And you know, to us, it's helping the kids. Sure, I would like to help all of those kids here in Austin, but $100 won't help them. You know, it might pay for their deductible if they have insurance. So the last one, the one that we had for July, he was autistic in an orphanage, couldn't see the blackboard, sent me a picture, sent me his history. And so he is now, he has glasses. And it's just such a blessing when, and she, like I said, she's so good about communicating and telling us, okay, this child, you know, we did this, this, and this. And I told her, hey, we trust you. You know, we're sending the money to you because you know how to use it. And, you know, like I said, $100 a month, that's not going to make us or break us. So that's our two little side things that we have going there. But we love the mission. And I had someone tell me one time, and she's sitting in this room, that those days had passed for her. You're never too old to go on this mission. Never. Because some of the things that you can do, yes, some of the things that you can do, you don't, aren't real physical, you know? Like I didn't lose any weight. Actually, I really gained weight. But so there is something there for everybody to do. And when you leave, your heart is going to be so big. And everyone that is with you in that group is going to be one of your closest friends, and you're going to love them forever. Right, Sandy? So anyway, Ken, Elizabeth, turn over to you.
Yeah, the only thing I would,
Thank you.
the picture of me holding a little child, I was kind of in charge of the traffic, bringing them into the clinic. And some of these little kids had never seen a white person. So they'd walk through the door and the first thing they do is cry, or their eyes would get this big because they'd see me. And so I try to hold them or touch them, or, you know, just try to be friendly with them. And then during the clinic, maybe check in on them and, you know, just try to soothe them a little bit. And that's a lot of fun. I mean, the little kids, like Dave said, they're the next leaders of the world, and they're the ones in Nairobi that'll be stepping up next. And so I always think it's very important to take care of the kids. Now, the year before, we did kind of we worked in a different clinic, a different location, and I had one little girl that came up every morning, and she'd always come to me, and she had food on her face, and I would have to wipe her face off. It's like porridge or something that showed up, you know, white on her skin. And all the other little kids would see me and run off and be scared. So she finally, I think, convinced them that I'm not such a bad guy. And then every morning I'd have, these are kids that couldn't go to school because they didn't have uniforms. And you've got to have uniforms to go to school. So I get 15 or 20 kids to show up that all want to help. So that I'd have them take the chairs, you know, the resin chairs, and spread them around for everybody to sit in that day, and then occasionally I'd slip them a piece of candy, you know, kind of behind my hand. And Dave didn't know about that, but
Now I do.
now you do. So, but it was nothing big. And then, you know, every day the crowd grew, and they would come and touch your arm and see if the white would wear off, or they want to touch your hair. And I said, I don't have much hair, but you can touch what I have, because they just had never done that before. So it was very rewarding, like my wife said. And then we have a suitcase set aside for the next trip, a leave behind suitcase. So we're getting ready for next year. So maybe you guys can join us.
We had a great picture of you. It didn't turn out so good, but you were giving about 10 little boys a really hard time. And that was a lot of fun.
My students, probably.
Yeah, they were near the front door when it was a little bit slower at the time.
Well,
Yeah.
You got to give them a hard time too sometimes. Thanks, guys.
Elizabeth?
So obviously it was my first time coming, and I didn't really understand how it was all going to work, but I had this like preconceived notion that I was going to be the prayer. It's like, I'm going to be in triage, I'm going to pray, this is what I want to do with people. And God had a totally different plan. So I started talking with the doctors, and they found out I'm a veterinarian. And they're like, oh, do you know these medicines? Do you know how to read medical language? I'm like, yeah, I know these conditions. And they're like, well, you're now going to do medicine. And I was like, oh, that'll be fine. You know, give people medicine. That's evangelizing too, right? So I was a little bummed initially, but I was like, no, I'm, trying to be excited about it. And what I didn't realize was that I probably got to speak to at least 50 to 60% of the people there, if not more. I got to learn Swahili. I got to look people in the eye. Every person that I sat with, I looked at them, we talked, we laughed, and I got to practice horrible Swahili, which was really fun and just made people excited. I got to share and hear stories with people. So it was a totally different type of evangelizing. And at the end of it, there's a quote I really like. I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't want to try to butcher it, from C.S. Lewis from The Hobbit, where Gandalf's talking to Galadriel, one of the, if y'all know this book, where she says, why did you bring this tiny hobbit with you? You need a warrior. And he's like, some people think it's great deeds that, slay the darkness, but I find that it's small deeds by the everyday people. So even in those little ways where you can laugh with people, like all the people I met, I had their cards that were named Elizabeth, I took photos with. I was like, I'm Elizabeth too. And we just would like laugh and bond and take a selfie. And it was like, they just loved that. And so those little ways that we showed love to people. And what it reminded me of is, even when it seems really difficult in our country to evangelize because we're so secular and people seem so close-hearted, is that we all have a deep yearning for a relationship with people and with God. It's all inside of us. And so all it takes are those small deeds that we do every day. Yes, those should translate to bigger deeds, but really small ways of showing love is what, God calls us to do as well. So.
Thank you. Yeah, to finish the luggage story, when we got back to Austin on the plane and Elizabeth turned her phone on, she had a message that said her luggage had been delivered to her home in Austin, Texas. And poor Noe spent, 6 hours at Bergstrom one day, and countless hours on the phone. And you know what? When you're in the middle of where we were, with people that they're living in shanties many times with no fresh water, no electricity, and they're still joyful, and they got more faith in their little finger than I got my whole body. It puts it into perspective to the point where those kinds of things are really small. I mean, Elizabeth had to go to the mall about every other day to get more clothes, but no, yeah, going to the mall is fun. So are there any questions?
Logistically, the supplies you need, the glasses, et cetera, how difficult, do you have a supply issue of getting what you need to support the mission materially?
No, we keep a inventory in Kenya now. Originally, we used to bring reading glasses, bring all of our lenses, supplies, and everything else with us. And every trip, it's gotten worse and worse with having to pay to get it into the country, some kind of tariff or this or that. And we got to thinking, you know what, when we order these reading glasses, they're coming from China, and then we're taking them with us there. It'd be easier just to order them from China, from Kenya, and have them there and support the local businesses. It doesn't cost hardly any different. And so everything that we possibly can, we get there, and we know ahead of time, far enough ahead of time, that the supply chain issues didn't really bother us because, we weren't there for 2 years during COVID. And so things were able to get fairly well stocked up. And our people on the ground there were still running small vision clinics, like in the Somali refugee camps in the north part of Kenya, where it's heavily Muslim, where no short-term missionaries could go, without getting killed for proselytizing. But we have people there that have been there for 20 years that know Swahili inside and out, and just know how to show the love of Jesus without getting in some kind of trouble religiously. And so the project still was, moving a little bit even during COVID. So yeah, the logistics have been pretty well solved. We're not taking near as much stuff with us as we used to. Sir Finnegan.
How long a day do you guys help? Like, how long a day are you at the clinic, and what time at night do you help them?
It's supposed to be 8 to 5, but we're on Kenyan time, which is like Mexican time, but about 3 times slower. And so we'll get there before 8 o'clock, and then it might take 45 minutes or more for the volunteers to arrive. And then we have a devotion. And when we arrive after the first day of the clinic, sometimes even the first one, we've got full tents of people already waiting. And they might be out there a couple hours before we ever see the first patient, because we can't really start without our doctors being there, because we need them for the things that we can't do as lay people. So once we got everybody there, if we're lucky, we might be running by 9 o'clock in the morning. And then on a really busy day, I've got to kind of keep track of about how many people per hour we're able to see. And we don't want to, we've had this happen in the past where we took too many people onto the grounds and we had to stay until 6 or 7 at night. And you don't want to be there after dark. That's kind of against our rules for security and all of that. So I usually shut the gate where we don't allow any more people in, somewhere around 3:30, depending on how busy the clinic is and what it's going to take us to finish up and be out of there sometime between maybe 5 or 5:30. The clinic is advertised as being 8 to 5. People always show up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, and they want to have the same care given to them that somebody did on Monday. They're a last minute people. They always wait until the very last minute, and we might have run out of what they need by then. Say, hey, you got to come back next year, wherever we're going to be. And that's a sad thing to have to do. But if you let it get out of hand, and some clinics out in rural areas, it's practically turned into a riot before, when people couldn't be seen, they were trying to send them home at the end of the day when they were going to shut down no matter what. This is it. We got to go. So it's we're very aware of the things that can go haywire. It may look easy when it's running right, but it's because of a lot of bad experiences along the way. Anybody else? We stay usually at a Catholic convent. There's several of them. That one of their missions is they have apartments for traveling missionaries that come from other countries, and that helps support their convent and what they do. We're in a gated one, usually in Karen, which is a nice suburb of Nairobi, almost like Round Rock, with malls and everything. And we get 2 meals a day there, breakfast and dinner, buffet style. Everybody has their own room with their own shower and their own commode. So it's pretty nice. There's no air conditioning, but it's usually in the 60s at night and about 75 or 80 every day. It's paradise with flowers year round. So I almost don't like to show pictures of that, or they would never send us again. But anyway, the nuns there take wonderful care of us. I got stuck there 6 extra days last year with COVID, and they took incredible care of me. The leaders of every team got COVID. All our teams went home, and there we were. So the leaders, we all worshiped together and, compared notes and became good friends. So, yeah, it's always safe where we stay, Ken.
I'm gonna say, there's no air conditioning, but each room comes with a mosquito net that you can sleep on.
Yeah, you need a mosquito net, possibly. It's not too bad in Nairobi being up on high ground. That's more of a problem down on low areas where you get standing water and mosquitoes. And our project actually does have a project where they're distributing malaria nets in the most heavily impacted areas of the country. And when they get it down to a certain level, then they move on to the next town, because when it gets down, doesn't have to get down to zero. Down past a certain level, it won't keep sustaining, and they can move on. So they teach women and children how to use mosquito nets, and they put them in their homes for them for free. It's part of our project. Okay, we're a little past time. So, sir, one more?
On average, how many people usually go to like fly?
Oh, on the team?
How many volunteers, like, instead of 4, how many on average?
Generally 7 to a team, and when Pastor Kevin comes, we generally have enough people for 2 teams. Having one of your pastors along really helps with recruiting. A few years ago, the Glenkeys came with us. I think we had, 9 or 10, and then one time with Sandra and Ken, we had 16 or 17 that were able to go to 2 different locations, which is a blessing when we can serve in more than one place. You got 6 or 7 stations in the clinic. Frankly, it only takes 4 or 5 people to kind of keep an eye on everything, because we try and get the local volunteers to take ownership of each station, because maybe they, especially the young men, never get any responsibility in that in a slum condition so much, and so they really start to shine, and they take ownership of the eye chart or whatever it is that we have them doing. And so the first day is more getting people trained up to do things the way that it needs to be done for it to run smoothly, and the paperwork and the statistics to all work out. But once we got things trained, it's kind of a self-running machine. So yeah, it can vary. I mean, I've done it with only 3 before, and that was really, I wouldn't want to do that again. I'm getting too old for that. All right, well, let me close with a prayer. Lord God, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together, lifting each other up, sharing each other's lives, sharing what this project is all about. Please put it on people's hearts to continue to support this, to continue to follow what we do. Very importantly, to continue praying for us. And Lord, if you have tweaked anybody's heart just a little bit with your Holy Spirit, that they might want to come with us, please have them get a hold of me or Pastor Kevin, and let us talk more about that, and continue to work on them to join this incredible ministry. Now, Lord, send us our separate ways. Make us realize that our mission field is right outside of this church, and that we might be your witnesses to everybody we meet. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you, everybody. As promised at the presentation today, here is the extra bonus section that we're going to add on to the presentation video that includes a lot of the wildlife that Elizabeth and I saw during our time on 4 different safaris at 3 different national game parks over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday before we started our clinic. So with all that said, let's get started. This is Elizabeth and Daniel Fowler Matua, my dear friend and guide, who has got a degree in biology. He also works at the Giraffe Rescue Center in Nairobi that rescues Rothschild giraffes. He's always been a blessing to us as far as animals, and especially when I'm doing birding with him. He knows every bird species, and it's really been helpful because he knows how to find the birds and to identify them as well. We're at the Great Rift Valley here, which is an absolutely beautiful view, and it's pretty much a tourist trap, but we got this picture there to show that we were there for sure. This is a hippo at Lake Naivasha that was giving us the eye as we drove by on a small boat. We never turned the motors off on the boats because that would be a bad idea if a hippo decided it wanted to come after you. Right away, we saw a gray heron fly by. It looks very similar to the great blue heron that we have here in Texas. Next, this is a Hadada ibis that was landing on the water. I caught it right in the middle of its final approach to its landing. And there they call an ibis an ibis, but same bird. This is an African fish eagle that looks very similar to our American eagle. And he's got a fish in his talon, as you can see. We always buy several fish from the local fishermen as we're heading out to the area where the eagles are. And then our guides always take a knife and gut the fish and put a reed in the body cavity. That way, when they throw the fish, if the eagle doesn't come down to get it, it floats and we can retrieve it and use it again. So the next sequence of shots is set up, but they're always pretty cool to see after the fact. So we always know where the eagle is going to fly to because I know where the guide is going to throw the fish. So it's easy to get a shot like this. Here's the eagle snatching the fish from the water. Great action shot. You use a high shutter speed to get out of the water like that. And then here it is as the eagle is flying away with the fish in both talons. And you get to see all the water spray in the air as well. Again, that's accomplished with a high shutter speed. When we got to Lake Nakuru, the next day, this would be Saturday morning, we had a morning safari. We found a lion that was all tuckered out from hunting at night, lying along the side of the road, and he didn't have a care in the world. This is one of the many kinds of weavers that you'll see in Kenya. It's a bird that weaves an incredible nest that is an enclosure. It's like a big, about a bowling ball size. And then it has a hole in the bottom of the nest, and the birds enter and leave through that hole in the bottom. Some of the birds are social, and several families will share a nest. And on the inside walls of the nest, they will build little shelves where the eggs are on the shelves. So it's a very fascinating bird. They make the nests out of all kinds of materials, everything from colorful yarn and plastic to twigs and reeds, leaves, anything that they can find. These birds are being fed at the lodge where we stayed. There's a hollow area of this log that's across two trees. And so they put food in there, and then I got quite a few shots like this as the weavers were coming in, and then the metallic bluebirds with the orange chests are superb starlings. Always a pretty looking bird. This is a lilac-breasted roller, another one of my favorites that I get to see in Kenya most of the time. They're absolutely beautiful in flight. This one was perched. Here's a baby water buck. People always love pictures of baby animals. Well, this is a baby water buck. This is a pod or a scoop of pelicans. They're called great white pelicans in Africa. We call ours the American white pelican. And when they're in the air, they're called a squadron. I love group names for different species of animals and birds. And many times a species will have more than one name depending on the activity that it's in or where it is. So again, this is a pod or a scoop. Here's a young buffalo with a red-billed oxpecker along for the ride at Lake Nakuru. These oxpeckers eat the bugs off of the herd animals. So you'll see them on elands, gazelles, buffalo, just about any kind of herd animal. And it's a symbiotic relationship. The animals don't mind at all. This bird is called an auger buzzard. And many of the birds that we would call either a hawk or some kind of a falcon or an eagle in the US are called buzzards in Kenya. So this is absolutely gorgeous bird. Here's a real interesting species. This is called a hoopoe. And we saw that at Lake Nakuru as well. With the long bill and the way the feathers are in the head, it's got a real unique appearance. This bird is called a red-cheeked cordon bleu. And boy, that's about as colorful as they get. This is a young impala buck. Quite often, the deer-like creatures will have one alpha male that ends up with all of the ladies for the year. And then the teenage boys basically are like teenage boys at a dance. They can't get a date. And every year they challenge the alpha male, and eventually one of them will win and become the alpha male. And the previous alpha male eventually ends up going off to die by himself because their safety is within the herd. Here's a mother warthog with feeding her babies here. What a cool thing that was to get to see. And here's one of the little Pumbas on his own. I love baby pictures. This landscape has zebras in the foreground. You have pelicans over to the right. And then the birds on the water in the middle of the picture are pink flamingos. Lake Nakuru is famous for the pink flamingos. And during drought years, many times the krill that they feed on are not very numerous. And so the birds are all white. They get their pink color from the krill or the tiny shrimp that they eat. This group of birds are yellow-billed storks. And they're social like the pelicans are. You always see them in groups. And they're really a stunning looking bird with that red around the head and then the big yellow bill and the long pink legs. This is a gray crested crane in flight, which is a rarity. I've only gotten these guys in flight several times on maybe 35 or 40 safaris that I've been on over the years in Kenya. So this is really special to get one of these in the air. Very iconic bird, very much identified with Africa. This one is called a white-browed coucal, C-O-U-C-A-L, also at Lake Nakuru. Very stunning looking bird with those red eyes. Here's a mama rhino with her baby rhino. These are white rhinoceroses. They have the square jaw. The black rhino has more of a triangular jaw. When we saw these giraffes, Daniel couldn't believe it. He knew about this behavior, but had never witnessed it in the wild. These are two young male giraffes that are practicing fighting. So the way the one on the left has its neck all whipped around, it's whipping its head at the other one. This next shot shows the other one replying with its own head whip. Absolutely amazing to see. I wish I had video of this. We watched this for about 10 minutes. Here we go again. It almost looks like they're necking. Finally, this behavior of one male mounting the back of the other is a sign of superiority or aggression or intimidation of the one to the other. And they do that among themselves. I'm not sure if they do this to other animals like lions or other predators that are trying to scare off from their young. They have incredibly strong kick of their front leg. At the giraffe center, Daniel passes around a leg bone from the giraffe, from the knee down to the hoof, and it is as heavy as steel. It doesn't have any marrow in the lower leg, and it can definitely kill a lion in one kick. Very powerful. There's three more giraffes, not as aggressive with each other, a little more peaceful shot. We found this leopard sleeping in a tree, and it woke up for a second or two here. Its eye is open at that point, but this is very unusual also. They hunt at night. They're nocturnal, and usually at dawn, before there's very much light, they have gone to sleep somewhere, either in the tall grass or in a tree, but they're very hard to spot. So this is very special that we were able to not only spot this one, but then be able to get several very good pictures of it. Another group of rhinos, I believe that these are black rhinos. I'm not positive though. We can't really see the jaw. Here's the sunset over Lake Nakuru as we were driving back to our lodge. That would be on our first full day there. This is called a brown snake eagle, also at Lake Nakuru. Looks very intense, and I would not want to be a snake with that bird around. This is a mother olive baboon with her child. Just look at the eyes on both of them. Very captivating. And a minute or two later, we have this heartwarming scene of the baby clinging to the mother. Same pair. And I call this one one mother to a customer. This is a Cape buffalo, and you can see that there's another one in the background that has an oxpecker on its back there, blurred out in the background. You almost always see those birds anywhere on the herd animals, as we said before. This is our final Saturday morning at the Nairobi National Game Park. And I took this picture out of the back of our van. We ride around in vans that have pop-up tops so you can stand up with your camera. You stay in the van, you never get out because the animals are wild. You don't want a hippo or a lion getting a hold of somebody. Anyway, look in this direction. It looks like we're out in the middle of nowhere. We're still on paved roads. Most of the park, there's several hundred miles of gravel roads or dirt roads. And if we look out the front of the van, this is out the back, but out the front, we would see the city skyline, and we can see airplanes taking off and landing at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. It's pretty amazing that we're right there on the outskirts of town, but yet this world-class game park is right there. It's one of my favorite places for animals and for birds. Here are two of those gray-crested cranes like the bird we saw in flight earlier at Lake Nakuru. Again, this is at the Nairobi National Game Park, and they're on top of a acacia tree. I love this shot. A minute later, one of them is looking at us upside down through his legs. So I called this one, Everything Looks Different Upside Down. Next, we saw a lion on a Cape buffalo on a kill. They probably killed this overnight. Quite often, the ones that get killed are either old or sickly, and they end up maybe out away from the herd where they're easy pickings for the animals of prey like the lions or the hyenas. And there's always jackals, and there's always other lions around. When one is feeding, there's others that are waiting for their turn. This is one that's waiting for its turn. It may have already gotten a few bites because it's got flies all around its face, and it may be eating the blood from the face. So there's a lot of symbiotic relationships like that where the different creatures kind of take care of each other. Here's a jackal that's waiting for its turn, and it may run in as the lions are having a shift change and make off with a little bit of meat quickly before a lion can get it. This one is probably the nicest looking jackal I've ever seen. I've seen them out in the wild on a kill, a whole group of them, a whole pack, and typically they're pretty scruffy looking. And this one actually looks pretty well maintained. Here's a Maasai ostrich female, and ladies, if you look close, ladies are always very, very jealous of how thick their eyelashes are. They've got wonderful eyelashes. This is what's called a yellow-necked spur fowl, probably for good reason with that yellow neck. You always see them around on the ground, foraging here and there for food. This is an eland, and he is blessed to have two red-billed oxpeckers taking care of his fur. Another baby baboon. In a very contemplative pose. Got a very unique looking pattern on its hands if you take a look closely. This bird here is called a hammerkop, Hamerkop. That's a Dutch word. I believe these birds are also in South Africa. That's probably where they got their name. And when it stretches its neck up, it does look kind of like a claw hammer between the neck and the head. We got to hike about a 1.5 mile round trip on a trail with a ranger that had a rifle, because quite often we will see lion or hippo footprints along the trail, so you know that they're there. And these were just huge crocodiles. It was absolutely amazing. I don't think I've ever seen an alligator quite this big. And finally, as you leave the park in the middle of a field, I just love this. Every year I get a picture of this incredible palm. Just a wonderful, wonderful plant. So with all of that, that concludes the slideshow for the wildlife. I thank you for watching, and come back again next year.